take a close look at how Iran could use armed gunboats and anti-ship missiles to tighten its grip on the Strait of Hormuz. It all began right in the shipping lanes. According to alerts from the United Kingdom Maritime Trade Operations Center, a commercial oil tanker was moving through waters about 20 nautical miles northeast of Oman. The ship's master reported that the vessel was approached by two armed boats belonging to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. What stands out here is that the IRGC vessels gave no warning over VHF radio, as is normally required. There was no notice at all, no signal ordering the ship to stop. In maritime combat conditions, this is an extremely serious and dangerous act, one that goes against standard maritime rules. Instead of issuing a warning, the two boats immediately opened fire on the massive oil tanker. But the main goal was not necessarily to cause physical damage. What they really wanted was to send a hard and unmistakable message. So how would Iran and the United States respond to an escalating blockade like this? The key point is that Iran understands very well that it is only a regional power, while its opponent is one of the most advanced navies in the world. That is why Tehran's strategy is not to fight head-on, but to take advantage of asymmetric warfare. Picture two civilian ships sailing near an aircraft carrier. On the surface, everything looks completely normal. But with one small move, the door of a shipping container suddenly swings open and a missile shoots out. These could be Iranian-made anti-ship missiles, not flashy, but still powerful enough to cause serious damage. Almost immediately after that, from those same cargo ships, a swarm of low-flying UAVs and high-speed attack boats rushes in. And it does not stop there. Many submarines could also fire torpedoes at the same time. If multiple strikes are launched in rapid succession, they could break through the defenses of a carrier strike group. And even if the hit rate is only around 10%, that could still be enough to inflict heavy damage. They may not sink the carrier, but they would only need to damage it badly enough to make those waters too dangerous for the United States to keep operating there. The first tactic, and also the most well-known, is the swarm tactic. The IRGC Navy operates hundreds of small, fast attack boats armed with heavy machine guns, rockets, and anti-ship missiles. Their method is simple, but extremely deadly. Instead of trying to go one-on-one with a U.S. destroyer, which they would almost certainly lose, they launch dozens of small boats at the same time from every direction. The goal is to overload the U.S. ship's defensive systems by creating more targets than the ship can track and destroy at once. The second tactic is laying naval mines in the Strait. This is the silent killer at the world's most important oil choke point. Iran is believed to possess thousands of naval mines, including smart mines that can recognize the distinctive acoustic signature of different types of ships. If conflict breaks out, they could use submarines, small boats, or even disguised civilian vessels to drop mines directly into the shipping lanes. The objective here is not only military but also economic. Simply by making the Strait unsafe for the U.S. Navy to pass through, global oil prices could spike immediately, delivering a major economic shock to the United States and its allies. The third tactic is turning the area into a kill zone by taking advantage of the terrain and coastal missile launchers. Iran's coastline is rugged and mountainous, making it ideal for hiding mobile launch vehicles. Tehran also uses a shoot-and-scoot approach, firing from truck-mounted systems or ballistic missile units, then immediately moving to another hidden position before the U.S. can strike back. This turns the Gulf into a place where U.S. warships are constantly under threat from land, with almost nowhere safe to hide. The fourth tactic is the ambush threat from many submarines. The Persian Gulf is actually fairly shallow, which makes it difficult for large U.S. nuclear submarines to operate effectively. But that same environment is very well suited to Iran's small diesel-electric submarines such as the Ghadir class. These submarines can sit quietly on the seafloor, wait for a target to pass overhead, and then suddenly launch torpedoes. This kind of ambush is aimed at high-value assets like aircraft carriers or destroyers, while remaining very hard for sonar to detect. Small but stealthy, these diesel-electric submarines were built specifically for the shallow waters of the Persian Gulf, posing a major threat to U.S. aircraft carriers. With their small size and low acoustic signature, Ghadir-class submarines can slip into strategic positions near choke points like the Strait of Hormuz. Armed with heavyweight torpedoes and able to deploy naval mines, they can launch surprise attacks on U.S. aircraft carriers. If they lie in ambush along expected carrier routes, these submarines could coordinate torpedo strikes aimed at the hull and propulsion systems. Just one successful hit could cripple flight operations and sharply reduce the U.S. Navy's ability to project air power in the region. In addition, they could lay underwater mines in critical sea lanes, forcing U.S. warships into predetermined ambush corridors where Iranian missiles and UAVs could strike next. The fifth tactic is the threat from above, namely UAV warfare. Iran has invested heavily in becoming a drone power in the Middle East. If war breaks out, they would not use UAVs only for surveillance, but also as loitering munitions, essentially suicide drones. The tactic would be to launch them in large waves aimed straight at the sensitive radar systems and flight decks of U.S. warships. The goal is to blind the ship's sensors and force flight operations to stop, leaving the vessels much more vulnerable to missile strikes. So how would the United States blockade the Strait of Hormuz while also dealing with Iran's own efforts to shut it down? Instead of risking massive aircraft carriers in such narrow waters, the U.S. Navy would most likely rely on guided missile destroyers. They might place one in the north, one in the center, and keep a third in reserve for rapid response. But the bigger problem is that Iran would not rely on missiles alone. They would also use naval mines. In this scenario, minefields could be spread all across the strait, and some mines might even drift into the waters of neighboring Arab states. To clear those mines, the United States would have to use littoral combat ships. These vessels can launch unmanned surface systems to sweep the area. When surface drones cannot reach deeply buried minefields, the U.S. Navy would deploy Knife Fish, a robotic submarine that dives straight into the danger zone to hunt for, identify, and neutralize buried mines using magnetic and acoustic signals. Even then, the danger would not be over. Iran could still send out swarms of small mosquito boats capable of threatening even large U.S. warships. To counter them, the United States could deploy high-speed Apache attack helicopters using their 30mm chain guns to chase down and destroy those boats. If the U.S. military were ordered to completely lock down the Strait of Hormuz, the result would not be a quick, clean victory. It would be the most complex, exhausting, and high-risk naval campaign since World War II. The way the United States would establish the front line begins with Phase 1, the picket line and the silent hunters. The spearhead of the operation would not be an aircraft carrier, because that kind of extremely valuable asset is too vulnerable inside a strait only about 21 nautical miles wide. Instead, the U.S. would use a wolf pack of 4 to 6 Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers. They would be deployed in a layered patrol formation, with one ship stationed to the north near the Iranian coast, one covering the deep channel in the center, and a third set farther back as a rapid response force. Their integrated radar systems would create an invisible dome over the strait. Almost nothing could fly, sail, or launch from shore without being detected within seconds. But what about beneath the water? The answer is the Virginia-class attack submarine. Quietly patrolling at a depth of around 400 feet, it carries heavyweight Mark 48 torpedoes powerful enough to break surface ships in half. To the IRGC, this submarine is almost invisible. Its mission is to deal with the worst-case scenarios. If Iran's Kilo-class submarines try to break the blockade or lay mines in the deep channel, they would be intercepted before they ever had a chance to surface. And what about naval mines? Would they really be a serious problem for U.S. destroyers? The answer is yes, absolutely. That is why Phase 2 would focus on robotic mine clearing systems. In reality, the greatest threat in a blockade is not always missiles flying in from a distance. Sometimes the more dangerous threat is contact mines and influence mines, cheap, patient, and extremely lethal. Iran could scatter these devices all across the Strait of Hormuz, and many could even drift into nearby waters. To deal with them, the United States would use Independence-class littoral combat ships. These are not traditional minesweepers. They are more like robotic motherships, staying outside the minefield at a safe distance while unmanned systems do the dangerous work. The process is carefully calculated: detect, localize, classify, identify, and neutralize. First, from the stern of the ship, they launch the Common Unmanned Surface Vehicle, an unmanned boat about 39 feet long that tows sonar behind it like a patient finger tracing the seafloor. At the same time, an MH-60 Seahawk helicopter lifts off from the flight deck to scan that same patch of water from about 100 feet above, looking for floating threats. But neither the unmanned surface craft nor the Seahawk can dive deep. That is why the system that actually enters the minefield is Knife Fish, an unmanned underwater vehicle. It goes where no sailor should have to go, providing enhanced mine hunting capability and detecting and identifying even buried mines in an extremely cluttered underwater environment. When it is time to finish the job, the U.S. Navy can also use an unmanned surface vessel towing an influence sweep system, tricking bottom mines into detonating harmlessly by imitating the magnetic and acoustic signature of a large warship. If Iran unleashes mosquito boat attacks, the United States would move into Phase 3, using air power. Imagine 24 fast attack boats rushing out of Bandar Abbas at 40 knots. They are armed with RPGs, heavy machine guns, and possibly even C-802 anti-ship missiles. They spread out wide, turning targeting into a nightmare. When the swarm becomes too large for warships to handle alone, the answer from the air could be the A-10 Thunderbolt II. Although famous for destroying tanks, the A-10 is also brutally effective against small targets at sea. Flying low and relatively slow, its pilots have excellent visibility. And the opening attack from the A-10 does not have to be its gun. It can begin with the AGM-65 Maverick missile, a precision-guided electro-optical or infrared weapon that the pilot guides straight into a target boat's engine compartment using a screen in the cockpit. Once it gets closer, the A-10 unleashes its main weapon, the 30mm GAU-8 Avenger cannon, firing depleted uranium rounds with enough destructive power to tear apart a fiberglass speedboat in about a 1-second burst. The signature sound of the A-10 alone creates a terrifying psychological effect. Then comes Phase 4, when the Apache brings death at sea level. While the A-10 operates at medium altitude, the Boeing AH-64E Apache Guardian fights right inside the threat envelope, low, fast, and cold-blooded. Army helicopter units could launch from the decks of U.S. Navy amphibious assault ships in the Gulf. Interestingly, the Apache was not originally designed for overwater combat, but in this scenario, it becomes an extremely dangerous boat hunting tool. Its preferred weapon against IRGC swarm boats is the AGM-114 Hellfire Romeo missile, a laser-guided precision strike weapon that can be fired in rapid succession. The Apache is fast enough to chase down high-speed attack boats at blistering speed. In addition, it carries the 30mm M230 chain gun, slower than the A-10's cannon but highly accurate, along with Hydra 70mm rockets that can be fired in volleys at groups of lightly armored boats. But amid all of these military scenarios, the important thing is that crises like this ultimately still affect ordinary people every day. All it takes is a spam email, a scam phone call, or a personal data leak online, and the consequences can spread far. Exposed data does not just lead to more spam or scam attempts. It can also affect your insurance rates and even cause a loan denial right when you need money most. Incogni is presented as a tool that helps protect privacy by regularly scanning for your information and preventing data brokers from reposting it. Users can also track the status of their data through a clear, real-time dashboard. With plans that include extra features, you can also use a custom removal tool. If you find a website publicly exposing your information, all you have to do is open that tool, paste in the link, and hit submit. After about 30 to 45 days, the data can be removed. This is how the promotional segment is inserted into the middle of an intense military topic. Returning to Hormuz, the first thing to understand is that this is an extremely important geographic choke point. At its narrowest point, the strait is only about 39 kilometers wide, or 21 nautical miles. The northern shore belongs to Iran, and the terrain is mostly rugged mountains. That gives Iran natural camouflage and ideal space for hardened bunkers housing missile launchers. Iran also controls a chain of islands such as Keshem, Larak, and Abu Musa. Do not think of them as just islands. Think of them as small but heavily armed anti-access defense systems parked right along the edge of the shipping routes. And those routes are extremely tight. Because the waters are shallow and filled with reefs, supertankers are forced to follow a very strict traffic separation scheme. There is an inbound lane about 2 miles wide, an outbound lane about 2 miles wide, and a 2-mile buffer zone in between. If attacked, these massive ships have almost no room to maneuver. To shut down the Strait of Hormuz, Iran has to control the islands, and the IRGC relies on a triad of hardened outposts, each with its own distinct but deadly role. First is Larak Island, which can be seen as the enforcer at the throat of the strait. Larak sits right at the choke point, looking directly down over the international shipping lanes. The strategy here is intimidation at close range. Because it is so close to the transit corridor, IRGC fast attack boats launching from here can reach a cargo ship in just minutes. For the crew, there is almost no time to react. Larak is used to impose no movement zones. Drones are launched to monitor tankers sitting still, while speedboats physically surround them. If the captain tries to start the engines and move, they open fire. Second is Keshem Island, the heavy weapons hub. If Larak is the knife at the throat, Keshem is the sledgehammer. It is the largest island in the Persian Gulf and serves as the IRGC's main military center. Its rugged, mountainous terrain hides a maze of underground bunkers and mobile anti-ship missile launchers. Keshem is built to launch heavy anti-ship missiles such as the P-15 Termit, while also hosting UAV bases and radar systems, making it the strategic anchor of Iran's entire coastal defense network. Third is Abu Musa, the forward attack outpost. Located farther south, close to the doorstep of rival Arab states, Abu Musa is a heavily fortified early warning center. It extends Iran's anti-access and area denial bubble deeper into the Gulf. The radars there can track coalition warships and cargo vessels long before they reach the choke point. In other words, it is a launch platform that significantly widens Iran's threat zone. When attacking a cargo ship, Iran's first move would most likely still be to launch a swarm of fast attack boats. The IRGC can deploy radar-evading speedboats capable of traveling at 50 to 70 knots. Around 10 to 20 boats would surround a cargo ship from a full 360 degrees. They rush in close, targeting weak points with heavy machine guns and shoulder-fired missiles. The goal is to hit the bridge and blind the ship, and hit the engine room to leave it dead in the water. Hidden in that chaos are also unmanned suicide boats, remotely controlled and packed with explosives, driven straight into the hull to blast a large hole right at the waterline. While the crew is overwhelmed, other boats quickly drop tethered naval mines directly into the ship's path. The message is clear. Stop, or risk having your keel torn apart. The next tactic is anti-ship missile attacks. If the swarm of boats does not get you, the missiles will. Coastal defense missiles such as Noor or Ghadir are launched from mobile trucks and then immediately pulled back into hardened caves. These cruise missiles use an extremely dangerous tactic, sea skimming flight, which sharply reduces the target's reaction time. To counter them, Allied destroyers would rely on advanced combat networks, such as the US Aegis system. The moment an Iranian missile leaves its launcher, the destroyer would track it and fire interceptors, such as the SM-2 or SM-6, to destroy the threat in midair. At the same time, Seahawk helicopters could hunt swarm boats from the air using Hellfire missiles. But in the end, the most effective countermeasure is not defense, but preemptive offense. The United States and its allies maintain a network of surveillance UAVs monitoring Iran's coastline in real time. If they detect mobile missile launchers leaving mountain bunkers or boats loading mines in port, Allied fighter aircraft and ship-launched Tomahawk missiles would be tasked with destroying them before they could fire a single shot. Hidden deep inside underground bunkers, Iran's P-15 anti-ship cruise missiles have been described as a major threat to international shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. To eliminate that danger, U.S. forces could use multiple 5,000-pound heavy bunker-buster bombs against hardened coastal missile sites. One suitable weapon for that mission is the GBU-72, a 5,000-pound precision-guided bomb fitted with a JDAM kit. These massive bombs can punch through about 160 feet of earth or 20 feet of solid reinforced concrete. Once they break through the protective layer, the explosion inside can completely wipe out the underground structure. The full picture shows that if conflict erupts in the Strait of Hormuz, it would not be a simple confrontation between two navies, but a long struggle of strategy and endurance, where geography, economics, technology, and psychological warfare would all shape the outcome at the same time.